I want to move to it, just in the time we have, to a direct question that affects the people who do need to be part of this revolution, where you've said that, and I'm just going to read this quotation, you can't break all the chains except one. You cannot say you want to be free of all the exploitation and oppression, except you want to keep the oppression of women by men. I think, while you've touched on that in this discussion of the fascists, I think this is I know this is a big question among men of all strata, but it's very important, and it's a big part of our revolution if we actually are going to get to, one, make a revolution, and two, have it a revolution that is leading towards the emancipation of all humanity. So before we move off of this, I'd like you to speak to that.
Well, in part, the thing about you can't do away with all oppression except, the oppression of women. You can't say you want to be for liberation, but you want to enslave women. And it goes back to the Lead Belly song and everything else. For men, including men who are brutally exploited and oppressed under the system and murderously, subjected to all kinds of degradation and like I said, literal murder. There's still a question of, there's one sphere, or at least, one concentrated sphere where you can act like the oppressor and feel like you're getting over, and that's, that's your relationship with your woman and with women in general. It comes out in in the most outrageous ways too. I just have to say this because it really gets to me. You hear some of these basic, and people say don't say basic, but I'm going to say basic because they're people catching hell right under at the base of society. You hear some of these men, say things like, when you talk to them or go to them about the right to abortion and how we have to stand up for the right, and they'll say, well, blah, blah, blah. But if she didn't want to get pregnant, she should have kept her legs closed. And nobody's telling these motherfuckers, you just keep your dick in your pants, okay? See, nobody, they don't want to hear that, right? So, all this bullshit is just a way of women should be subordinate to men. That's what it says in the Bible. Someone will tell you, that's just the way it is naturally and so on. This is among the oppressed, people suffering terribly, I'm talking about, although they are not the only ones, who do this by any means. And, I will say, just on a personal note, that for me, in my own development as a revolutionary and communist, I would say it has been a lifelong process of a continually deepening understanding of, the horrific nature of the oppression of women, but also the pivotal and central role of the struggle for the emancipation of women in the overall communist revolution to emancipate all humanity from every form of oppression and exploitation. So, this really is, crucial in the whole struggle. There is not going to be any liberating struggle, any liberating real revolution that doesn't have right at the heart of it, at the core of it, the emancipation of women from every way in which they're degraded and debased and oppressed and, violently suppressed. And, this is a lot of struggle. Now, look, I've talked about backward shit that people are into, but there also are, positive things where, not only among young women, but even some of the young men, including among the oppressed, have taken a better stand on this because they can identify, at least on as a first step, beginning basis, they can identify with people who are being oppressed. And then sometimes it's there's more largeness of mind involved. They don't want oppression of any kind, as much as they understand that. They're against it. So there's contention out there. But, in order, like I said, in order to have this revolution, this has to be at the core of it. It's not the only form of oppression. It has to be uprooted, obviously, but it is right at the core of transforming the whole world. This historic and, thousands of year old oppression of women in different forms in different societies, and it's been completely bound up with the division of society overall into masters and slaves, into oppressors and oppressors, exploiters and exploiters. You go back in history, it's completely bound up with that and has run through every form of oppression and exploitation, going back to days of slavery right up to the modern capitalism, imperialism, and all its forms of oppression.